Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Xenia from Alexa Real Estate, and today I've got with me Michael Liebowitz, and we're going to be talking about self-esteem. And I just want to start off. Michael is one of these people that has a lot of definitions and a lot of very accurate definitions. Where I'm the kind of person that likes to understand things in simple words. So I've got a definition from Ayn Rand, Michael, and it says the conviction. Self-esteem is the conviction that one is competent to live and worthy of living, right? And if I can put that into words, it is about how much you trust yourself to live, right? So if I can give you an example, when I first started my journey as an entrepreneur, I had another real estate company. So this is actually the one that I'm running now. Alexa Real Estate is actually my second real estate company. So I started off with a different one many years ago, like 20 years ago. And I had a business partner and we didn't have the same values. And, we just kept not, having business meetings, and we didn't agree on a lot of things. And I said to her, look, that's fine. I don't want to restrict you from where, the journey that you're going down. But my journey is different. So let's split the business down the middle. I take half, you take half, and we'll part ways. Right. So we did that. But when I approached her, I actually had so much confidence in myself in building that business that I said to her, you can keep the name. You can keep the logo, you can keep the building that it's in, you can keep all the furniture, you can keep everything. All I want is half the clients, because that was the value to me. And with those half the clients, I trusted myself that I would actually build a new business around it and build it better based on the mistakes that we did in the first business. And there was a lot of them. And one of the things that I wanted to do was address the issue of a very high burnout in staff, which I did in my new company. But is that an example of self-esteem? You think, just trusting yourself that it's me that is creating the business. It's not the brand, it's not the colors, it's not the logo. It's actually me that's creating the business, and I'm going to be okay because I have me.
Well, first, good evening, Xenia, because where I'm at, it is not morning, it's the nighttime. And good evening to everybody else. And the definition that you shared of self-esteem is Ayn Rand's idea of self-esteem. It has served me very well for more than 20 years now. And if you break it down into its component parts, that self-esteem is a combination of self-confidence and self-respect, right? So self-confidence is exactly what you're talking about. It's the belief that I'm capable of dealing with reality. Now, you applied it to a specific idea, to a specific venture, your business, your job. But self-esteem, as Rand defined it, while it would apply in that case, it's more broad. It's that I am capable of dealing with reality as it is, whether it be in my relationships, my work, dealing with myself, wherever it is, I'm competent to deal with it. I've got the rational mind that will allow me to solve my problems and prosper on this earth, right? But then there's the second component, which self-respect. And self-respect ultimately boils down to, do I believe, what would lead me to respect myself, I guess, ultimately, is I won't respect myself if I don't believe that I'm a good person. If I'm not an ethical person, if I don't believe I'm going to do the right things when faced with ethical decisions, I'm not going to respect myself. So self-respect is ultimately based on whether or not I think that I'm a moral person. So Rand said it's the belief that you can achieve what you want in life and that you're worthy of achieving. Now, it's important to note the two can't actually be separated, the self-respect and the self-confidence component. A person who doesn't believe they're capable of living isn't going to respect themselves. And a person that doesn't respect themselves is not going to think that they're worthy of living. So that's a very important thing. But once you have those two components, now you have what she called self-esteem. Now, one more thing, it's important, it's vital that in Rand's system, that she had three root values, three primary values were reason, purpose, and self-esteem. So she thought self-esteem was of such importance that she included it in her main values. And I think that speaks very highly for the concept.
Yeah, so it is really the confidence and respect you have for yourself and your abilities. Is that right? Is that a good summary?
It's your confidence in your abilities, but it's also your belief in your ethical worth, that you're going to do the right thing in life. You're going to make ethical decisions. You're not going to violate your principles. You're not going to sacrifice your integrity, because there's pressure on you from whether it be friends, family, your boss, whatever it is. You're not going to sacrifice your principles. You're going to live according to the values and principles that you hold.
And I can see why that's important, Michael, because if you are sacrificing your own values and your own principles, then in time, you're not going to actually have the ability to live your life the way that you want to live it. So you're actually, it is a self-sabotaging kind of thing, as you know, because you've lived that life and you can get away with it for a little bit, and it catches up with you, and spending 25 years in jail was not in your best interest to do. So
no, it wasn't very fun either, by the way.
Yeah, so it actually ties all into that. So I can see how that all ties in. And she says that it's essential for achieving goals, and I can see why, because you've got the values, and you've got the belief and the confidence that you can do it, and also skills. Would the skills come into it at some stage?
Yes, of course. I would like Xenia to, before we get into the sort of the current application of how it would work for us in the world today, I would like to give an example of my own poor self-esteem and the disasters that it wrought in my life. And I want to tell you how it developed. So just give me a few minutes to do this. So I was raised by my mother. She was a single mother, and she was a heroin addict. My father, he was in and out of my life, and he was a heroin addict as well. From a young age, both my parents taught me to be violent. And my father, he had this reputation in my neighborhood. He was he was a tough guy. So I wanted to be like him. And I felt that I would get self-worth from being like him. But then I also had this situation with my mother. My mother would leave me home alone. She started leaving me home alone when I was 6. And she would leave me home alone, for hours on end. And then a few things happened. So when I was 8 or 9, my father and his new wife beat my mother up very badly. And I thought my mother was going to die, but she didn't. She lived. But it left me with a fear of losing my mother. Not too long after that, my mother overdosed and almost died. I actually heard, I was woken up to the sound of EMTs and walkie-talkies and police and everything. And I was in my living room, and I was distraught and didn't know what was going on. And I heard my mother's friend whisper on the phone. My mother's name was Nancy, and her friend said, "I think Nancy's dead." And that just, it just made me cringe. I was 10 or 11. It was an awful feeling. And not long after that, my mother overdosed again and almost died. So what ended up happening was I incorporated this fear that my mother was going to die. And the fact that my mother was not dependable ever, I thought that nobody was going to be dependable. So I projected my fear of my mother dying onto the world. And I thought that everybody that I would ever care about was going to abandon me or leave me in some way. So you combine that with the violence that I learned and the fact that I wanted to be like my father. Now, once I entered into relationship with girls, I became jealous. I thought that they were always going to leave me. So I was possessive, jealous, told them what to do, became violent with them. And that ultimately culminated in coming to jail, because when my girlfriend broke up with me and she had a new boyfriend, I couldn't take it. So I arranged to have her and her new boyfriend. Well, her boyfriend's the one that I arranged to have stabbed, but she also got stabbed in the process. It was a mistake, but nonetheless, I put her at risk. I put both of them at serious risk, and ultimately ended up in prison. Why? Because I had poor self-esteem. I didn't feel good about myself. I didn't feel that I was lovable. So I felt that everybody that I would come in contact with was going to leave me. Now, Some people would say, oh, well, you're blaming your parents. No, I'm really not, because the point of the matter is, it was my interpretation of events. The fact that my parents acted that way, I was confronted with an option. I could have said, the way that my parents treat me is a reflection of them, not me. Everybody on the planet is not like my parents, right? So I could have done that in a rational way and gained self-esteem. Instead, I accepted it emotionally, integrated into my being, and came out an insecure mess who was primed for violence. But an interesting thing happened. So I ended up in prison, for having them stabbed. And in prison, I was doing drugs and I began working on myself. And as I was working on myself, I realized what I just told you, how much of my problems were caused by my insecurity, by my fear of abandonment, by my low self-esteem. So I started to work on it. That was a big thing I needed to work on, was this abandonment fear. While I was working on this, while I was dealing with my abandonment issues, remember, my biggest fear was my mother was going to die. My mother committed suicide while I was in prison. So that was like the biggest abandonment ever. Like I can't think of a bigger one. But a strange thing happened. I realized I survived. It didn't kill me. And I also realized that it was her problem, not mine. That was her issue. It wasn't a reflection of me. It was a reflection of her. The way my father was when I was a kid was a reflection of him, not me. And by reasoning through the process, I realized that I wasn't a person who was inherently unworthy. I realized that, I had a lot of work to do to earn self-esteem, that it's not just something that's granted to us by a gift from nature or God or genetics or evolution or whatever you want to say, but I put in the effort. I work like hell. And at this point in my life, I can say I have, I think, good self-esteem. I no longer am obsessed with what other people think about me. I'm no longer trying to keep up with the Joneses or impress other people. I just want to be me, speak my mind, and do what I want to do and not hurt anybody else in the process.
That's an incredible story, Michael, and congratulations. And I agree that self-esteem is something that has to be earned. Not everyone can earn it though. And not everyone has.
Hold on. Back up. Why can't they?
Well, not everyone has. Well, why aren't they? Would be my question.
Well, because it takes effort.
Well, let me take that back. Not everyone will.
Well, that's a statement of fact.
Yeah.
The reason that I was so quick to challenge you on it, Xenia, is because I don't want to give people the impression that it's a matter of determinism. Because ultimately, unless there's some biological or physical damage to our brains, we are all capable of making the choice to be better human beings, to earn self-esteem, to gain confidence in ourselves and our abilities, to make ethical decisions so that we respect ourselves. Anybody with an intact brain can do this. It's not a matter of ability either. It's a matter of choice, a choice to be committed to reason and rationality and to make those choices when they arise in our lives.
So how would people come to that choice? Because I run a property management business, and you said there jealousy and possessiveness and entitlement to a relationship that was over, which is really the problem there. I see that a lot. So I manage about 300 properties, and about once a month we will see a property that's been trashed by domestic violence. And it's usually, people say, the property that I rented this morning, the landlord was a little bit apprehensive because there was a small dog in the property. So I had to convince him that the dog was okay. Now, what is a real big threat to landlords is jealous ex-boyfriends. And that is a real problem. Jealous ex-boyfriends that are coming from interstate, tracking people down, feeling entitled to relationships that are over, and smashing the hell out of a property. So I'm talking smash windows, doors, walls, everything smashed in the property because of this jealousy issue. So it is an actual problem in society. So that's why I asked the question. These tools exist. What is it about our society that people can't tap into it to say, okay, I have self-esteem within myself to know that yes, that relationship is over, that doesn't reflect on me. I'm still a person.
Well, you said that why can't they tap into it, and what is it about society? And I'm very hesitant to say it's because of society, only because I'm a big believer in individual responsibility.
Correct.
And people have to make these decisions for themselves. And it takes a lot of work. It's not easy always to do the right thing when you're faced with pressure. While my co-author of Down the Rabbit Hole and I, Brent McCall, we were in prison. We wrote that book knowing that the inmates were going to be unhappy with us. The staff was going to be unhappy with us, but we also knew it was the right thing to do. Was it scary? Sure. But what was the alternative? To cower, to sit in a corner, to cave to public pressure? And you do that, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes, the worse your self-esteem is going to become, and then the more you're going to do it. So instead of focusing, I think, for me, what I want to focus on is, instead of focusing on what led to people in society having poor self-esteem, is what are the consequences of it and what can be done about it. And the consequences, like in my case, were clear. I mean, I ended up in prison. But just think about it. If a person doesn't believe they're capable to deal with reality, are they going to try? If you don't believe you can write a book, are you going to try to write the book? If you don't believe you can operate a business, are you going to? If you don't believe you can shoot the basketball or write a song or any number of other things, have a healthy relationship, if you don't believe you're capable, you're not going to try. On the other side of the coin, if you don't think that you're worthy of a success, if you don't think you're worthy of the good things in life, if you don't think you're worthy of happiness, then you're not going to bother trying. Why would you go and get something for yourself that you don't think you deserve? And that's what happens. People don't think they're worthy of happiness. They don't think they're worthy of success, and they don't go after it. They don't try to do it.
I agree. Have you heard of Martin Seligman's work on learned
I have, yes. Yes, he started off with learned helplessness, and then went on to learned optimism.
Correct. So you
Yes.
are quite right that it's
Yes.
all learned, and that people get stuck in that thing. I want to tie it now. What is your perspective of tying that into happiness?
Well, if a person doesn't think they can live in life, and they don't think that they are worthy of life, how happy are they going to be? I mean, happiness is ultimately a function of the way that we think about things. Now, we could be delusional, of course, about the way we think about things and think everything's going well when it's really not. That's for a psychiatrist to answer whether that's happiness or not. But ultimately, how happy could a person be? I'll say it again: if they don't think that they're worthy and don't think they can achieve things in life. Now, imagine the person who believes in themselves, is confident that they can have good friendships, have a good relationship with, a good romantic relationship, achieve the things in life that they want financially, take the vacations that they want. They think they're a good person, so they believe they're worthy of achieving all these things. It's not rocket science to me to know that the person who has those thought patterns is going to be a happy person.
Yeah. Look, we're in The Fountainhead. When we look at a character like Howard Rourke, right?
Yes.
That Ayn Rand has depicted as the perfect man, and you see where his values lie, and his values lied in self-esteem. So I know that, like, just from reading the book, I got the impression that Dominic was second in that. So Dominic was a value, but it was a second value to his own self-esteem and self-worth. Would you agree with something like that?
Of course, I would, because ultimately, if you don't put yourself first, what can you ever achieve? What can you ever have? If anytime you put somebody else above yourself in your value scale, you're headed for disaster, because now your well-being is dependent on that person. Now, there's complicated issues here, parents and children, and would I want to live without my loved one, and stuff like that. And I really don't want to delve into that here, because those are very difficult ethical questions. Not that there's not answers to them. I just don't think that we need to, for the sake of this discussion. But for the sake of this discussion, it's, I think, imperative that a person puts themselves first, and otherwise you're not good for anybody. It's like, if you just think about your health. Suppose you don't worry about your health and you worry about everybody else's. So you don't eat, you feed everybody else. You don't get exercise because you want to spend your time serving others. And eventually your body breaks down. And it's the same thing emotionally and psychologically. If you don't put yourself first, take care of yourself first, you're no good to anybody else.
Correct. And this is a part where, where if you put yourself first, then if you're in a situation where your partner says, you know what, this relationship is over, it's not working for me anymore, of course you're going to be sad. But it's not your first thing. Yourself is your first value. So you will move on, trusting yourself that you will move on, and whether you find another relationship or whether you're happy alone does not matter. But your happiness is not contingent to that person. Have you heard of the Hungarian philosopher Csikszentmihalyi?
Mihaly.
Yeah,
First name is
Mihaly.
Yes, I've heard of him. Yes, flow.
Yeah. So he set out to determine what happiness is. And I don't know if you've read any of his experiments, but I can briefly sum it up now.
Okay.
So he set out to work out what happiness is by giving people something that he could use to interrupt them at any moment. And he was doing that just random times of the day. And I don't know how he measured annoyance, but he measured happiness by how annoyed they were by being interrupted in certain states. And he found two main things that he said that would make people happy. Can you guess what they are?
Two main things that make people happy? I would guess work and sex. I don't know.
Yeah, true. Well, the two main things that he found was sex and food. So people didn't want to be interrupted during any of those two things. So eating or having sex, it's like, leave me alone, don't interrupt. But there was actually something that measured higher than sex, right? And that is the thing that he actually called flow.
Yes.
And flow is getting into a state where you're doing an activity that's not too high for your skills. It's challenging enough for your skills in the level. So it's the right level of difficulty and combined with the right level of your skills, because if it's too high for your skill level, it's going to produce anxiety, right? If it's too if your skills are above that and it's too not enough, then it's going to produce boredom. So hitting that spot where you're in flow and you're growing, and that is the thing that actually produces the most happiness in a person, because you're actually using your mind and your values to produce something. And it doesn't really matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether it's baking a cake or building a business. He found that flow state, people being in that flow state was the thing that was conducive to human happiness.
I would say so, because it's probably the situation where people feel most competent. They feel like they're capable of dealing with reality, of dealing with this world. And I think that absolutely would create happiness. I know when I'm in those zones where I feel like I'm very good at what I'm doing, it makes me happy. And I can't imagine it would be any different for anybody else.
Yeah, I know. And as an entrepreneur, and especially when I first started, probably not so much now, I used to forget to eat. I would just constantly be in that flow state where, an earthquake could be going on around me and I would not budge. There was one time we were in an office building with about 10 other officers there, and we were in the front of the building, and there was one time it was Good Friday and I went into work because there was no one in the office. So I thought, I'm going to have the office to myself and I can just work and get things done. The only thing was that the office was flooded, right? So the whole building was actually flooded. So I called a plumber, and while I called a plumber, and they took a couple of hours to come, I was sitting there on my laptop typing with ankle deep in water, But like,
That's dedication.
yeah. So they walked in and they looked at me and they said, "Do you not know that it's flooded?" I said, "Yes, I called you. There was nothing I can do about it. I can't actually get rid of the water. So all I can do is wait. So while I'm waiting, I'm getting work done." So, you know, my shoes, socks, everything was wet, and the whole floor was wet. The carpet was soaked, and I was still sitting there working like nothing happened. So, you know, that is flow. And I think that is a big contributor to success, and it's a big contributor of happiness. And for me, that was a big contributor in saying to my business partner, "You keep the name," because I trust myself to actually create another business and do it better, which I did.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad you mentioned business, because I actually would like to tie this discussion into what your whole purpose is in having your stand in your power chat room, and having the reason we're doing these is we're trying to promote a rational society and to promote capitalism. So what is the relevance of self-esteem to capitalism? Well, think about it. Capitalism requires personal responsibility. It requires people to create. It requires people to have confidence in themselves. It requires people to believe that they're worthy of getting the fruits of their labors. So if you don't have those things, if you don't have self-esteem, you're not going to have production. You're not going to have thriving. It's just not going to happen. And now it also explains to me something else. If you think about the enemies of capitalism, a lot of them anyway, I'm not going to say all, but think about their envy for the rich, how much they hate the rich, how much they want to tear the rich down, tax the rich, regulate the rich. Why? If somebody believes that they're capable of achieving that kind of success, they go ahead and do it. They don't want to bring somebody else down. They want to bring themselves up. But there's so many people out there with miserable inferiority complexes who just want to tear others down.
And it actually doesn't make sense. In socialism, I was talking about this on the Todd Feinberg show this morning. Socialism weaponizes jealousy.
Yes, it does.
They weaponize it and they use it to get votes to keep them in power. And there is nothing really to be jealous about. It is a lack of self-esteem if we can tie it all in together. It's a lack of, so I've got a lack of self-esteem, and it's no different to you going after your girlfriend because she's decided to be with another man. You know, it's going after the rich because they have decided to create money for themselves. So, you know, let's tear them down because I don't have the confidence in myself to be able to do that. And as you said before, you have the ability. Everyone has the ability to do it. Right now I don't have the confidence, and you have, and you're a billionaire, you're an asshole, so I'm going to tear you down and take your money because you owe me things. And it needs to be quite the opposite. Like, a lot of my friends are multimillionaires. A lot of my friends have got a lot more money than I have, and I purposely align myself to those people because looking at them and looking at their lifestyle. My newest business partner, George McCoskey, we're creating some new real estate agencies this year with him on board. He's a multimillionaire, and he's got a beautiful $2-3 million home on the beach, and you know, he travels a lot, and but you need to get on board with how these people work. You know, how does a millionaire mind work? Because you've got the same kind of mind. So instead of being jealous, you mimic them, and that's how you become successful.
Learn from successful people rather than hating them, and then you can mimic, like you said, mimic their accomplishments. With all these multimillionaires, you know, are any of them looking to hire a beginning podcaster like myself? Because I could use the money.
I can ask, maybe me.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I think that's all we can do for today. Do you have any closing remarks, Michael?
Just that I think that self-esteem is an important value to hold. It's an important value to pursue, and people can pursue it. There's an abundance of books out there on the subject, but it requires self-honesty, it requires hard work, and it requires diligence, but it can be done. I was once a miserable human being with very poor self-esteem. I'm not that person any longer. I mean, I'm still working on it. It's not like my self-esteem is perfect. It requires, it's probably going to be a lifelong task, but the rewards for me are well worth the effort.
Yeah, fantastic. And I was once a refugee to Australia. So we've all started from nothing. We've all come from miserable backgrounds, and keep going. That's all I have to say. Just one thing, Michael. My 15-year-old daughter started following you on TikTok.
Okay, all right.
And she listened to some of the things you had to say, and she just said, "Oh, Michael is so cute." Love it. So Michael is cute, and thanks, like and subscribe, guys, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all next week. Please type any questions that you have in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you, Xenia.
Thank you.